I received some comments about how Zohran Mamdani's policies, which are socialist policies, are going to benefit the poor. And so if you are against him, gosh, you don't love the poor. That couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I'm going to argue his policies are going to damage the poor and the middle class. You and I need to talk about this. I'm Marcus Peter. So, if you don't know who Zohran Mamdani is, he's a Democratic Socialist assemblyman. He is running for mayor of New York, and his policies are, your standard socialist nonsense, the kind of things you see in textbooks that have never worked out in history. But Zohran Mamdani is finally going to get it right. Everyone else has gotten it wrong throughout history because communism and socialism simply don't work. But he's going to get it right. His policies: high taxation, public housing expansion, rent control, state-run healthcare, defunding the police, income redistribution.
The system has hundreds of thousands of people unhoused, right? For what? And if there was any system that could guarantee each person housing, whether you call it the abolition of private property or you call it, just a statewide housing guarantee, it is preferable to what is going on right now.
Historically, every one of these have been proven to backfire, so let's talk about exactly that. First, his policy: tax the rich, but also tax landlords, and through initiatives like what he calls the Invest in Our New York Act. The last time New York invented such expansive tax hikes, in the post-1970s, New York City increased its taxes on high earners and businessmen. You know what the result was? Was it affluence? Was it development? No. Wealth flight. You know why? Businessmen have reason. They didn't get to where they were simply by throwing money around. And when they see that higher taxation is going to damage them, what do? They take their investments, they take their capital, they take their money out of the state. Two states that have lesser government control that will allow for greater flourishing of their business endeavors. So the wealth flight in post-1970s New York caused a shrinking tax base and a 1975 fiscal crisis. It brought the city to the brink of bankruptcy. But no. Apparently, because New Yorkers get it, and Zohran Mamdani is going to get this right. This isn't the first time, by the way. Britain's 1970s super taxes under Harold Wilson and James Callaghan, same deal, achieved virtually the exact same thing. France's wealth tax exodus. This was about 1981 to 2017. President Francois Mitterrand, he introduced a wealth tax that drove an estimated 12,000 millionaires fleeing not just the state but the nation, along with what? 200 billion euros in assets. So yes, tax the rich, and let's see how far that gets you. Number two, Mamdani proposes to expand rent control and build universal public housing. Oh, that's great! Finally, the poor and middle income people will finally be able to afford housing. Except that everywhere that we've seen this established, we see detriment follow. New York City attempted rent control post-World War II. It introduced that as a temporary wartime measure. You know what happened? It distorted the housing market. For decades, economist Walter Block actually showed that the rent-controlled apartments fell into disrepair. Landlords left the market because it was impossible to make an honest living. You couldn't be competitive. And so housing scarcity simply worsened because the state of disrepair simply increased. Cabrini Green in Chicago and Pruitt Ego in St. Louis, same deals. Poor maintenance, mismanagement, social dysfunction. All of these led to what? Dangerous, decaying complexes that had to be demolished. They weren't housable. They weren't usable. Public housing without strong accountability and market forces to keep the entire avenue competitive degenerates into dependency-ridden and crime-infested and frequently even rodent-infested areas and places of housing. We go on from there. He wants to provide state funding, housing, education, healthcare, and jobs for all. Oh, how nice, except we saw the Soviet Union attempt this, 1917. By 1991, the USSR completely collapsed. Why? Food shortages, shoddy goods, economic stagnation, political repression. This was the norm. It collapsed under the weight of its own inefficiency. But before you say, oh, the USSR got it wrong, Venezuela, 1999 to the present, Hugo Chavez implemented essentially the same thing, vast socialist programs. You know what happened? They were erased. They were erased because oil revenues fell. Industries were nationalized. Inflation hit 65,000% in 2018. 7.7 Venezuelans have already fed the country and increasing. Amtrak and USPS here in the United States are actually examples of why this is a problem. Every time institutions are nationalized like that, what do we see? Inefficiency, debt, poor service. The lines are absurd. We can't rely on them because the state is not supposed to function as a primary manager of entrepreneurship and institutions. Finally, he wants free state-run healthcare and education at all levels. Where have we seen this work? Never. UK's NHS National Health Service, in 2023, nearly 7.6 million patients were on wait lists for healthcare.
The waiting list for elective care has reached a new record of almost 7.7 million. It means the list has grown every month since the Prime Minister's pledge in January to reduce waiting lists by next year.
That's what national healthcare will do for you. He also wants to defund the police. I don't even have to tell you what happened. New York City attempted this in 2020 to 2021, and in that 1 year, murders increased by 45%, shootings doubled. And I can go on. What are we to learn from this? The conclusion is very simple. The scriptures tell us, you shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great, but in righteousness shall you judge your neighbor. John Paul II warned us that if we cave to a socialist ideology, we will reap the results of a socialist regime. And the results of a socialist regime are very simple. The denigration of the dignity of the human person. The world will be divided into two religions, the God who became man and the man who tries to make himself God. In short, these policies, if enacted absolutely, will be the cause of a destruction of anywhere from a county, a state, to even a potential nation. Thank God for separation of state powers that allows for other states to flourish while lunatic ideas like socialist regimes attempt to take over other states. Think about this carefully. Think about the long-term ramifications and gosh, pick up history and economic books and learn for ourselves how this is ultimately destructive. Mamdani isn't going to benefit the poor or the middle class. Thank you for joining us. I'm Marcus Peter.